Welcome to my presentation on debunking myths by Elizabeth Andrade. The myth that I will be discussing today is that students are more successful when teachers adapt lessons to individual learning styles. Learning styles are the idea that people have a specific learning preference and that instruction should be tailored according to the preference in order to enhance learning outcomes. There are many different types of learning styles. One of the most common ones is auditory learning. Auditory learners retain information best when it is presented through sound and speech. Another popular learning theory is visual learning. Visual learners process and retain information best when they can see it. Often, these students will find that information makes more sense when it is presented with an aid of a chart or illustration. The third learning theory is kinesthetic learning. A kinesthetic learner processes information best when they are physically engaged in the learning process. So what's the issue? The idea that we learn better when taught via our preferred learning style is not supported by evidence. Nonetheless, the concept remains hugely popular, no doubt in part because learning via our preferred learning style can lead us to feel like we've learned more, even though we haven't. According to Daniel Willingham, a professor of psychology at the University of West Virginia, the learning styles theory had its heyday in 1950, but faded when psychologists could not replicate it. In 1970, researchers thought it was a useful way to think about learning disabilities, but that didn't pan out either. The most conclusive research completed in 2008 does not conclude that the learning styles are wrong, but rather that no one had come up with a theory with any evidence behind it. That's a pretty good reason to not use it, says Willingham. We'd rather know something is right before we use it in the classroom. Now you might ask yourself, why does this myth persist? Learning styles are so common that you never even think to question it. There are a plethora of articles and information on learning theories that it sounds like common knowledge. It just seems logical. Dr. Phil Newton of Swansea University decided to put himself in the shoes of an educator to understand what the literature says about this learning theory. What would happen, he wondered, if you searched a couple of big research databases for information about learning styles and read the papers that popped up? The results were discouraging. Of the 109 papers he reviewed, 94% of the current research papers start out with a positive view of learning styles, despite the research that discredits their use. So, even an educator who does the right thing and takes the time to search for literature could easily come to a false conclusion. One reason that we need to address the myth of learning styles is that teachers already have to accommodate to all the differences in their classrooms, including disabilities and language barriers. We cannot waste our time and resources on a theory that has no evidence to support it. Another reason is that labels can be dangerous and misleading. Labeling a child as a certain type of learner can prevent them from trying a different strategy that might be more beneficial to them, simply because it does not fall into their preferred learning style. The key for teachers is not to match the unit of content to the student's individual preferences for learning, which would require the teachers to have 3 different ways of teaching every unit for content, but rather to match the unit of content to the best way to create meaning for most students. In his book, How We Learn, Benedict Carey outlines the components of a successful learner. 3 teaching strategies that he believes will promote student success include the use of practice tests, interleaved practice, and distributive learning. Some benefits to taking practice tests include building stamina, alleviating anxiety, and helping retain information. Interleaving is a process where students mix multiple subjects or topics while they study in order to improve their learning. Carey says that spacing out your learning can almost double the amount that we remember later on. In conclusion, teachers need to focus on implementing proven brain-based teaching strategies in their classrooms to promote student learning.